Manchester United really need to sign some new players, but don't you know what? Financial fair play means they can't sign anyone unless some things happen. And this is Sensible Transfers, where me and Jon Mackenzie are going to work out what the most sensible option in the transfer market Man United can take. What the options are, what should they do, John? Because January's coming up, what's happening?
January is coming up. Now in Sensible Transfers, this is just about what you and me think should happen.
It's January now.
But reality is out there. There is a real world out there. And if you want to know what is actually happening in the real world of Manchester United this January, there is an article on The Athletic called Manchester United's Transfer Window, Choupo-Moting, Muller and Girassi on radar, but cash is tight. That's by Laurie Whitwell and Dan Sheldon. So I would go over there if you want to find out more about what's going to happen this January. But you are right. There is no money. And so that means probably Manchester United are going to have to find value in the transfer market using loans.
So they need to get some loan signings in at striker. We think that's the immediate thing they need to do. And the ones they've been linked with, which are in that article, Choupo-Moting,
Thomas Muller,
yeah,
and Timo Werner, who has subsequently been announced at Spurs as a signing there. So yeah, we're talking about the standard Man United. We need to bring in backup option up front. So we'll bring someone in like Odion Ighalo or Valvekos, etc. Not very compelling maybe for Manchester United fans, but needs to be done.
And should we quickly pick who the most sensible of those options are right now?
Well, I mean, there's two options there. One of them is Choupo-Moting, who I would consider to be like a standard number 9. Someone who gets in the box, plays off the last man, is going to be a finisher. He's quite
He's got
tall.
Premier League experience with Stoke.
That's right. And also Liga experience with PSG. Made that famous trip from Stoke to Paris, well-trodden transfer trip. Thomas Muller is obviously the Raumdeuter, the space investigator.
He's not going to
extraordinaire. He's not going to Man United, no. He's also not really a striker option. So I would go for, if I was pushed, I would go for Choupo-Moting.
Well, I like that. Now, if they were to sell someone in January, that might free up some funds, because although they have new owners, the problem is that they can't register themselves in time. They can't register themselves, I don't know what that means. But basically, the money that they could put in won't be ready to be put in January because of red tape. And so the way they could make more money to buy someone is by selling some players. And players they're linked with selling are Anthony Martial, Casemiro, Rafael Varane, and Jadon Sancho. So if they did do that, then they'd have some money spare to maybe buy someone in. And there's one player who might be a good option, because if they could bring in, say, roughly £15 million, John, what could they do?
If they brought in that figure, that precise figure,
yeah. I've
heard rumours that Ciro Girassi, who is a striker at Stuttgart, has a release clause of around that figure. It's incredible that you mentioned that figure. He would be another player who I think they would then consider bringing in as a backup striker option.
Would he be the right option for the long-term development of Man United?
Well, I think what we're going to find as we go through our squad options later on is that the problem that you have when you're trying to build a squad is that you can't bring in necessarily 2 incredible starting level options into every position as a football club. And so you have to get the balance right between your starting option and then someone who's happy to be the backup option as well. And I think Girassi is probably really well placed to be a player who would be happy coming off the bench to make a difference at Manchester United. But you've recently done some content on Girassi, so you know all about him.
I've done some content.
You've done some content.
Girassi has had his best ever season this season. He's the 3rd top scorer in Europe, the top 5 leagues. So therefore, he seems like an amazing buy. But it's come out of mostly nowhere because he's been a kind of 10-goal-a-season striker his entire life. He's 27. And so the hot streak has coincided with Stuttgart changing their manager. I think it's Seb Hoeneß, isn't it, in charge of them? And he's made them more creative, more attacking. He's moved from a deep line counter-attack, hit them on the break, fight the relegation battle team, to one that can actually create goals and chances. And so Girassi has really benefited from that. So if he were to leave and get the big move to a big club with the big payday that would be, that'd probably be nice for him. Good squad option. It gives Hojlund the chance to have a bit of a break and develop quietly rather than being the sole focus and all the pressure. So it makes sense for long-term squad development to have that sort of an option if they were to do it. But I don't think it's really what Man United should do, because they should be going for the absolute top ones. They should have 2 top strikers who are always competing for that slot. And I think that's a longer-term fix. So
we should try and identify those areas where we know that you can bring in a player where it doesn't necessarily matter who the sporting director or manager is going to be. It is going to raise the level of the squad.
Because they're good.
Yeah, good players.
We'll find some good players. Well, let's look at the squad and identify where that exact issue is. And like John was saying, they have no money, so they can't buy anyone in January unless they sell all the players, which they're not going to be able to do either. It's not happening. So these are longer term, maybe next summer, the summer coming. So this summer, I suppose. Is it this summer or next summer?
This summer.
This summer.
I think the standout area where they can improve is going to be this area here on the pitch, which is the
That appears to be the right wing.
That is the right wing.
Now, I believe Anthony plays there right now, John.
Anthony does play right there, right now.
You're going to say something uncontroversial now?
I'm going to say something uncontroversial. He hasn't maybe been as successful as had been anticipated. Certainly not for the fee that was spent on him. And they've obviously not been able to be productive enough through that kind of area. So I think this is definitely an area where, the backups there, you've got Pelitri and Amad Diallo may be off on loan. You can really just bring in a right-sided option here and raise the profile of the Man United squad.
So what sort of profile player should go into this position if it were to be a right winger? For example, Anthony tends to come inside an awful lot. So would they be an outside right winger, or do you want someone who's just a better version of what Anthony is?
Yeah, I guess it depends on what they anticipate doing with Anthony in the future, because if you're going to have to keep Anthony as that player who can cut inside option, then it makes sense then to have a more classic winger style profile where they're going to be able to, get down the line, draw a line into these sorts of areas and play cutbacks. Obviously, a lot of the time in the modern game, managers prefer inverted wingers, so wingers playing on their weak side. So if your right foot is playing on the left and vice versa. And obviously with a player like Anthony being left-footed, that's why he has that tendency to come inside. So he then has the ball on his left foot so he can play these kind of balls in.
So it should be right-footed?
Could be, but also what you really want, I think, is a two-way winger. So someone who can go either way past a fullback. It makes life so much harder for a fullback if they aren't sure which way a winger is going. Part of the problem
backwards or forwards?
Part of the problem Anthony has is that we know that he's going to try and get on his left foot. Because he doesn't have necessarily the physicality and pace to get round players on the outside and then get the ball back in. So that makes their fullback's job much easier. So if you can get a player who is, it's fine if they can come inside, it's fine if they're left-footed, but what is important is that they have the physicality and the technical ability to be able to get into these, I think, onto these byline areas as well and generate chances from there. So we're looking for someone who can go both ways, but also someone who is going to have production output, so generating chances.
And so, who is your sensible transfer first pick for right wing, John?
I've talked about two different things here, right? One of which is dribbling, being a good dribbler. The other one is being productive as a dribbler. So what I've done is I've looked through a load of players and I've bunched them by whether or not they're like a high value creator, that is, they're generating chances for their teammates.
And you're a high level generator of creation.
Thanks, I've also looked at dribble volume and success as well. And what I actually found was quite interesting is that there's a lot of very high value creators who actually don't tend to be high volume dribblers. And there's a lot of high volume dribblers who don't necessarily tend to be high value creators. There is one player who stands out. Do you want one name?
I want one name,
Okay, well, I'm going to give you one name. And that one name is Nico Williams.
Nico Williams, yeah.
At Athletic Club, which is based in Bilbao. He is a fantastic profile because he is able to dribble. He's a high volume dribbler. So he's attempted 100 dribbles this season in La Liga, and he has completed 50 of those. So that's a 50% dribble success rate. That's really nice, easy maths.
Good maths.
It's good, isn't it? He's also very good in terms of shot creating action. So on my list, I have him at 5.8 shots created per 90 minutes. And that puts him 16th out of the top 5 leagues. So he's right up there in terms of his high value creation, but he's also right up there with his dribble volume as well.
One of the things I was going to say about Williams is that he does tend to play in the left as more of an inverted player, but if he plays on the right, he does then also come inside quite a lot. And I wonder whether whoever they bring in is going to matter who the right back is, because Wan-Bissaka is not great going forward. If Dalot does overlap, then you've got that option of keeping the width, because this is what he likes to do, is go inside and be more attacking in here. But that's kind of what Anthony does. But I guess the point being is that regardless of what the right back does, Williams should produce far more than what Anthony has done.
Yeah, so I think wing dynamics are really important, so I think it's important that we bring them up. With Williams, he is right-footed, so that means, okay, he might have a tendency to try and come inside, try and get towards the goal, but he will have the ability then, because he can dribble both ways, to get, as we said, into these wide areas, and then he's on his stronger right foot to be able to play the cutback. So I think there's a possibility here that this could just be down to team instructions from a manager, and if you have another manager in who wants him to perform more like a traditional winger, he can say to him, hit the byline.
I agree with that. Who else have we got, John? You've got an exciting one for me. Who is it?
Yeah, the other option that I have that I think is maybe a good, decent option is Rafinha at Barcelona. Now, Rafinha is a different profile to Williams because, as you said before, I talked about high volume dribblers and then high value creators. He's a high value creator, Rafinha. He's not been a high volume dribbler this season at Barcelona. So he's attempted 40 dribbles and completed 24. Now, that puts him up at 60% dribble success. That's because he's just not attempting as many dribbles as some of these other players that we're looking at. But I think Rafinha offers like a really decent option because we know that Barcelona are always struggling for cash in recent years. It could be the case that Man United could get Rafinha fairly cheaply, in which case he offers everything that we're talking about here, and more so than Williams, who you said does like to come inside. Rafinha also likes to come inside. He is left-footed, but Rafinha can also get to bylines and play cutbacks as well. So he would be, I think, a really decent option, maybe on the cheap for them as well. He is 27 years old, so there may be concerns that Man United are doing what they've done in the last few windows, which is bring players who are coming towards the opposite end of their prime, and then you're lumped with big contracts that you then have to try and get rid of. But I think you'll get at least 3 decent years out of Rafinha, could get him cheap, and that makes him a pretty exciting option.
He's had his big move already, so where's the motivation to do it again? That's the problem they've had with a couple of signings. Now, a player I like, Michael Elise, who's actually linked with them, so it seems like I've done no work. But Elise, fantastic player, right wing, left-footed. He's a chance creator, as far as I'm aware, from your numbers that you have, and you'll see on screen now. Really lovely player who has a good range of passing and would offer these sorts of long balls to the winger on the opposite side, because he'll drop deep and help out with build-up. Also good out of possession, which is something important to what Ten Hag or whoever the manager will want. But there's another player we've got written down here, Savio, who is a very good dribbly player, but he plays for the City group.
That's right.
And therefore, no.
There's a few issues here, I think, with some of the players that we've lined up because of various contractual things. So Savio plays for the City Football Group. It'd be unlikely they would sell to Manchester United. It's worth saying Nico Williams plays for Athletic Club, and they only employ Basque descendant players. That means that they're very protective of the players that they do have. And so it could be quite hard for them to prize Williams away. So that could be quite expensive. And we've got other players as well on the side here. We've got Pedro Neto, for example, playing at Wolves. Again, he's got a long contract, so you'd have to pay to get him out there. He'll probably be a hot property amongst other elite sides at the moment as well. We know that he can do it in the Premier League, so that makes him an attractive prospect as well. And then we've got a few other players. I mean, Zaragoza, he's moved to Bayern. He's been playing at Granada. He's gone back to Granada on loan, so he's no longer an option. Bakayoko's playing in the Eredivisie. So again, we've got the same potential issue that we had with Anthony, which is, okay, he looks great in the Eredivisie. Will he be able to make the step up into the Premier League? Will he have the physicality to be able to do the things that we want him to do for Manchester United? And then we've got Matthias Sole as well, who is a Juventus player who's playing at Frosinone on loan at the moment. Again, he's a similar profile, I think, to Elise. So he's someone who I think probably wants to play more as like an interior. So creative player playing out of the half space. And I think both Elise and Sole could be a problem because Fernandes likes to play in that area as well. And so the problem is if these guys can't play in the wide area, then the solution that you would probably have is, well, we could play them inside then. But then you're like, well, we've got Fernandes there as well. Mason Mount also may be an option to play in that position as well. So you're then sort of overloading in positions that could start impinging on other teammates, I think.
It's a really well-assembled squad. As you can see, again, in this big squad graph. The other thing we think that they probably need to improve on in the transfer market is a centre-back. But not just any centre-back, John.
We've got Lisandro Martinez, who is the starting level centre-back on the left-hand side. He's been a bit injured this season, but he will be the one that they will go to as their starting level centre-back on that side. And then we have a load of other players who don't really feel like necessarily starting level players in the current system. So Rafael Varane was brought in as a starting level centre-back, but maybe hasn't been as good in possession as they might want. You've got Harry Maguire, who's played generally on the left-hand side, but they've moved him across to the right because of the way that Erik Ten Hag wants his centre-backs to work. And then you've got Lindelof, who can sit between both left and right-sided centre-backs. And then Johnny Evans, who I just don't think any elite team would really want to have a player like Evans on their book still. He's doing a very good job at the moment in the circumstances.
Be a good mentor to other players.
Yeah,
perhaps.
Exactly. But I think what this squad really is lacking now is a starting level right-sided centre-back, maybe a younger profile who can complement Martinez quite well, who offers, I think, maybe some of the upsides that Martinez doesn't offer, which is a physical profile that matches the fact that he's quite a short player. So that means that you're necessarily going to suffer in sort of set-piece scenarios as well. So we're looking for a less aggressive centre-back than Martinez, who offers physical, I think, upside in that respect.
Probably right-footed, tall, strong, fast.
Good on the ball as well, because you want this team wants to be a possession-heavy team.
This player sounds almost too good to be true. Who could they possibly be? Tell me your first sensible transfer for right-sided centre-back, John Mackenzie.
Well, I'm afraid I'm going to go boring as well, because I'm going to talk about a player who has been linked with them.
You're going to go boring?
I'm going to go boring. I'm going to go with the boring option, and that is Jean-Clair Todibo, who's at Nice. Now, there's a lot of reasons why this transfer makes a lot of sense. Firstly, Nice are owned by INEOS. which is Jim Ratcliffe's company, who now has sporting control at Manchester United.
This might make negotiations easier.
You'd think so, yeah, and should make him available for not the most expensive, particularly. The other thing with Todibo is that he is the perfect profile for what we're talking about. He's a slightly less aggressive centre-back than Martinez. He's also physically a different profile, so he's good aerially, but also very, very good in possession of the ball as well. A really pacey centre-back as well, so good at backwards defending. I think he just offers like a really, really nice complementary profile to someone like Martinez.
Backwards defending. I also like a player called Antonio Silva, who plays for Benfica, because what I think United need, in addition to all the physical attributes that you can measure, is that unmeasurable quality of leadership and character, because you need to have strong characters who can play. Now, he wants to be Benfica captain. He's molded himself in the guise of Ruben Dias. Comes through Benfica, the same thing. Wears the same number as Dias, but he's one of these players who is a leader at a very young age. And so he's worn captain's armband for them. He plays for Portugal already. He's had Champions League minutes since he was 18. Done very well against players like Mbappe. All the hits. So I think he's got all of that. But he's also very good on the ball with carrying it and passing it out from the back. And to have someone that's that young age who's already got that potential to be a leader, he's talked about as though he'll be a guarantee to the next Real Madrid kind of centre-back at some point, which is why if United could get him in now, get the good few years out of him while they're growing into the next bit, it makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah,
I hadn't really come across Silva at all. I spent a bit of time watching him and really like what I see. Like you say, really, really comfortable in possession of the ball. And again, just a really nice rounded profile. So as we were saying before, you can bring a player like that in. It doesn't matter who your sporting director is going to be or your manager is going to be in the future. They're just going to love him. He's a great player. And as you mentioned, I really like his ability to ball carry, because I think in the modern age, elite teams are constantly being put under pressure by high presses.
Yeah.
If you have a player who can destabilise presses through ball carrying, just makes a huge difference as well. So yeah, I really agree with all of what you've said about his potential as a profile. The only worry that I would have with this is the cost, because I think he has a release fee of around 100 million euros.
Yeah, so 86, 88 million.
Yeah, so it's a lot of money. And the difference between, for me, Todibo and Silva is that Silva probably has the higher ceiling, but Todibo is available much easier because of the contractual.
Which makes it more sensible.
Yeah, exactly. Which makes it maybe slightly more sensible. So your option then is, do we bring in a player who we know is going to be guaranteed starter for the next 10 years, or do you bring in someone who's going to be a guaranteed starter for the next 5 years maybe, until we improve on him, but we know that we can get him in cheaply and then use money elsewhere to patch the holes in the squad, which definitely exist.
Well, we've solved who they should buy now, so we should name some other players that they won't buy.
We should. I had a couple of other names. I had Edmund Tapsoba, who is currently playing at Bayer Leverkusen under Xabi Alonso.
He's very good. He's very active. He makes things happen.
Yeah.
He's fun. He likes to carry the ball a lot.
Yeah, and he's tended to play on the left-hand side of defences more recently, but he has played on the right as well. He is right-footed. I think, obviously playing...
He takes penalties as well.
Does he?
Yeah.
I did not know that. But he's obviously playing in a elite-sided side who are playing very good possession football, so no worries there. The other name that often gets bandied around, particularly last season, was Ousmane Diomande, who is currently at Sporting. Yeah, I nearly said Benfica, but that's Silva, isn't it? He's at Sporting. Again, a really, really fun player in possession of the ball, but for me, maybe just a bit too aggressive to be a partner to Martinez. But again, another great option who no doubt will be playing elite football in the next few seasons.
Okay then, John, let's do our sensible transfer picks. What have you got?
So I'm going to go for Williams as the right wing option, and I'm going to go for Todibo as the right centre-back option. What about yourself?
I'm going to go for Williams as the right wing option and Todibo as the right centre-back option.
Yeah, nice.
Sensible. But to be clear, they won't do it in January because there's no money unless they sell all the players, and then when the owners come in with all the money they can put in, then they can do these sorts of things and become the most sensible club of all.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Daniel Taylor, Ollie Kay, Amy Lawrence and Rafa Honigstein. With the latest transfer news and insight on every Premier League football story that matters, theathletic.com puts you inside football. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.